Yeah, yeah. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday, Jack. Okay, lot to go over. So,
Yeah, so the initial idea for this on my side, and then
mhm,
we will go maybe to the big picture first with maybe your ideas.
sure.
So when I start developing diagrams, it's kind of dangerous because I have a big shelf, of books on pretty much everything. So I have a big shelf on AI as an AI field, right? And I have a big book on subfields of AI that includes machine learning, and I also have quite a bit of publications and various conference proceedings on some areas like HCI, and then fuzzy logic and all that stuff. So I kind of start thinking about, hey, so now we have an engine that can kind of execute on those ideas quite a bit. So that's kind of where if let's say we're talking about agentic systems, things are very easy to start to kind of to expand on with a realization that this is no longer a an impossible lift to actually make it happen. So that's kind of like just my prefix here.
Yeah. Oh, well, this is where, I can get overconfident in, thinking something's interesting and then either finding out it's already been done. But I still think we might be in a good spot because there's one, the utility of it all is that we all work and toil, et cetera, right? And somehow we have to communicate how to work together. If you, like you said, if you have a company of one, you don't need these tools. But
Mm,
maybe you do, honestly, because you never know. It's hard to keep track of multi-layered problems that you need to solve. Anything's going to have branches, and I guess my experience, at least with some engineers, maybe not you, but some engineers have the tendency to go down rabbit holes, right? Or as maybe we all do, right? But they
yeah.
start to prioritize in things that don't really move the needle that much, and they become hyper focused. And we can all
Mm.
see that the human problem is actually the biggest problem. Computers are pretty sitting there waiting around to do whatever, but we have to figure out how to harness that. So I'm not making too many
Yeah, yeah,
jumps in
that's yeah.
logic too far. So
No,
what
no.
if the system could understand a context around other things other than the task itself, right? Maybe you're sick. Sick is a good one, but maybe you're not inspired, or maybe you're stuck, or maybe you're whatever. So I don't want to skip this. I just wanted to go to the left because I kind of put together a couple of things, right?
Mm,
Um, I was kind of happy with these roles, right? So
mm,
we could have 10 roles, but actually these two are interesting to me because I started to actually see later on, like this strategist role, I think we're getting away, having been a strategist, right? I think we get away with not doing that much, where there is stuff to do. It's just very contextual, right? It's also, this is where bad bosses come in to spoil everything, right? Because they
mm.
micromanage, they do too much, but it's the wrong thing.
Yeah, yeah. To me, the strategist is kind of like the project manager with a vision, right? Somebody who can do more than just manage the Jira, software or whatever scheduling or project management kind of solution and you use, right? So to me, right, it would be somebody who can kind of like, find the rabbit holes and avoid them, and maybe it's not a programmer, right, but understands the rabbit holes in programming. Maybe it's another not a CIO, but understands, the vision and the environment, so understands the big picture as well, right? So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe this is a good, there's doers and there's thinkers, and maybe we do both at the same time, right? Like it doesn't have
Mm,
to be a mutually exclusive, but they're definitely two different perspectives, two different
mm,
contexts, right? And we want this strategist to have this view of all the things that are happening, which should be many things, right? Many stories. And there's some sort of status that we're using this concept of confidence intervals to say, are these things happening at all, right? So I think these are these are just sort of guidelines around it, right? You want to have a role, but you don't want to not just let things work themselves out naturally, right? If somebody's stuck in a problem for 2 or 3 hours, whatever, man, that's life. That's good. Sometimes, right? You're working your way through something. Maybe tomorrow you'll think of something. All these things are good. So, by the way, I'm calling this thing Spark for some reason. Does that seem good?
Yeah, very
Okay.
good. Yeah.
Okay. Well, because, it's this kind of idea like, things are not often, sometimes things need a little whatever. Okay. But here's the creator things they need. Also, there's I threw in a lot of gamification you'll see in a minute. Because one thing this has to do is be mutually has to run itself, right? You have to reward each participant. If you don't get rewards, you won't do it, right? So there is a concept in here somewhere of that. So far, does this make sense? Like we just need two sides of the coin, and these are the roles so far. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah. So in the organizational behavior literature, those roles are kind of exactly delineated this way, right? So you need on your team somebody who is able to execute on a plan, but usually it's not the same person that is building the plan, right?
Right.
Or creating a vision, right? So and so you kind of have like a so that would be the like a major delineation, and within the creators there's going to be subgroups, and within the strategists there's also going to be subgroup. But I think your approach is spot on.
Cool. So let's see. I don't know why I put this in. Oh, yeah, I guess this was a quote from somebody that I thought drove home some of the problem statement here, which is trust, right? Like we're trying to get people to trust each other. And this level of skill set can be variable, and so can this one, right? Like we're all human. So what we need to do is to have the system help us grow, right, in our skills and our understanding. But whatever, it's supposed to be a plus. So I don't know. I put that in there. So then we've got the repetition. So I come from Scrum and have had really good experiences with that, but not always, because most of the time it isn't used properly. But every day there's this idea of a check-in, right? People are going to be, hey, what are you doing today, right? So here's, automating that makes a lot of sense, right? You're working on X, Y, and Z, and you can have statuses. So these are some status ideas, which, right? I'm just working on it or whatever. So far, so good. Sooner or later, we'll get to a data structure very soon. But then there's this idea of, I thought it was funny because we're trying to get at some emotional reading to the strategist or even the person themselves, right? Like if you are doing nothing, that could trigger, who knows, right? I mean, anything to do with emotions can have some interesting experiences involved with it, right? Rather than just sitting there staring at your computer coding, you go through emotional cycles every day, right? And I'm just trying to say, one of my favorite ones is that you're stuck, but somebody could help you. This is sort of the Stack Overflow aspect of this, right? Like if a team can bond together over some problem and fix it together, they're going to be stronger in the future than they would be if that didn't happen, or if it was left aside or whatever, right? Or that's the thing where true Scrum is supposed to be that you go to the person next to you and you're like, hey, whatever, can you take a look at this, right? Yeah. So far, make any sense? I don't know. I guess I'm trying to build a data structure here.
Yeah, totally. Yes. So we are kind of thinking about those as aspects of the affective computing kind of module of the system, right? Where we kind of the AI kind of is able to discover those, right? And the AI is kind of actively having a model, utilizing a model of those, and that model of am I confused, right? Am I kind of inspired, right? It's something that can be detected from kind of a meeting transcript or through the code, right? Like I'm kind of writing the same procedure, and kind of struggling, kind of maybe implementing something, going back and forth quite a bit. Of that, so a lot of this can be kind of really actively managed. I mean, discovered, managed, and addressed by an AI system, nowadays, as long as those things are modeled appropriately. So yeah.
Well, and that's where I get to trying to see what it would look like. Remember, we've got this scenario. Well, one thing that it's really possible to me is that this could change minute by minute, right? I think that's
Mm,
one important thing that we often lack is cadence that is like, let's say somebody worked all night, right? That's obvious. That
mm,
happens all the time. We don't have to be synchronous in order to have feelings and or, you know, the
yeah.
right, like it doesn't have to be synchronous, and that's one of the biggest problem with meetings, right, is that they enforce synchronicity when I didn't even get to look at, I didn't finish what I was supposed to do or whatever, right? Like they're just not, we both dislike them, right? That's
Mm,
so I think we're trying to say I was trying to get in model task human sentiment. Okay, so we're asking people sentiment rather than completion. How are
mm,
you on your tasks or this task? I'm not working on that one. I'm working on this one or whatever. Like these are just sort of like and I'm such a huge fan of Tamagotchis, so I'm throwing in Tamagotchis in here, right? Like you kind
okay.
of have to feed the status meter because that's going to be feedback to you, and that's another thing down here. But this is where we wanted to end up, right? Is we've got this generated a plan, but basically the idea was that this particular plan um, is obviously much more doable than this plan, right?
Mm,
And that's where we're trying to say, as a strategist, you're going to want to see how different sequences of people plus tasks add up to some sort of confidence level. That's the magic part, right? Like this would be seen as more doable if you didn't just look at the hours and the staff or whatever blunt instrument you're looking at, right?
mm,
And that's to me the powerful part because this plan is going to change, right? As you go into the plan, these confidence intervals should change. And that's why I said the fun job of this strategist is interesting now because now you have to decide whether or not to abandon the plan, right? Like when things start to go south, which they do, you have to start to either build the team's confidence in some way, right? Maybe you
mm,
say, hey, let's take a break and go to the amusement park or whatever. You see what I mean? Like you actually have a job now because you are seeing things fail in real time.
mm,
And that's fine because, hey, that's the way it always goes. So
mm,
what is the AI doing? And so here's just a dumb idea around how you're feeding it, but this is the main word, right? Is I think what if, and it's not a what if, how about the the AI starts to generate verbal context around an activity, right? So if you check in and
mm,
you say stuck, 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 the context for each could be like, just got stuck. Oh, was stuck for a while. Oh, seems to still be stuck. I don't care, right? I'm just saying verbally it becomes a story. So that then when you ask it, hey, can you tell me what's going on with um with once this becomes a whole list of tasks, right? All these tasks
Mhm.
should be updated, and they can also come with narratives, because the thing could be, hey, refactoring the database is going really slowly, you know, and most of the people working on it or the person working on it stuck, and maybe it's because of something you could do something about. Either way, the whole point is to get some sort of activity happening.
Mhm.
I don't know if these are all different pieces, but then you'll be happy to know there. Here's all of the data structures, which thankfully, GPT can build for me. But I think what do we have? We've got some of the definitions, right? And then I actually think I built these over here just to see what they are, like I haven't really looked at this too closely, but I'm just interested in like starting to build it out. Um,
Mhm.
and see where we're. I also built this little thing here so you can kind of see it where um, people can give their feelings, and then these feelings sort of become a this is that idea, we need to focus, we need new insight. I don't know, this is just a dumb little thing it built, which is probably incorrect, but it was fun. I don't know. You get what I mean with this. Like it can be fun. I don't know.
Yeah. So exactly. Kind of like to situate this. So let's say I'm writing on a system. Let's say I'm writing code right now.
Yeah.
I'm kind of doing exactly like what you said. I'm not so much writing code anymore. I'm writing stories,
Yep.
and this is not so different from classical quote unquote software engineering, because I very much remember one of my introductory programming courses where the professor told us that, hey, the appropriate way to start programming is to start writing basically inline or descriptions of what you want to accomplish, right? So that your system initially exists as stories, as comments, descriptions, kind of like remarks of what you want to accomplish. And then after you have like a very crisp and clear vision of what you want to do, then you start kind of intertwining actual Java or C++ or Python code in between those, right? So what we are doing right now is with large language models is kind of very similar to this, except that the large language model can take the story and actually act on it, right? Whereas, in the past, you have to have a human expert programmer to do that. So what you are trying to accomplish is something very similar, right? Maybe you have a plan, maybe you have a task that is, whatever organizational kind of task it might be, and you are kind of building like this story framework that might include affective aspects to it, feelings, kind of those intervals that we are talking about. So yeah, that is not a new idea actually. It's just that now we can run it.
Well, oh,
So
100%, right? Because that's why I was saying if you have a person doing a lot of this, it doesn't work, right? Because people
yeah.
are just biased, right? And they get, even these strategist roles, trust me, you don't have much control as much as you think.
Mm.
But I think the system could provide it, and yeah. Um, so yeah, there's just this is really just a fancy task list. I guess this is just Jira. But it isn't Jira because what did I say? Oh, this is well, I think I can get to the fun part, which is, let's see, oh, you can, rewarding, right? That's another one. I thought these were fun. So depending upon your actions, you start to get a character. And I thought it'd be really fun that the character also helps you build up your um, resume in the system, right? Because problems come across, and I know we have this idea of a full stack developer, but that's stupid, right? Like people have things that they can do conceptually easier than they can do other things conceptually, right? Present company, I know I'm like that, right? I can sort of do things, but I can only get so far, right? So when a project comes along, you want this cross-functional team, but that can actually be unrelated job abilities. This is another thing. Like, can you grow within the system? And that's another reward for being in it. So the big fun here is, I think this is already exists. It's Git, right? So I've been wanting to build something on the check-in box of Git for a while, because if you just use that, because most people don't, right? They kind of leave it blank or put whatever, right? They don't really use this idea of that as a way to build statuses. But it seemed like, since the product is already built and people already use it, it would be fun somehow to attach this to Git. And since we were both talking about Linus, I figured, why not, throw him another bone.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, especially if you have a way to manage Git, right? Because very often things kind of get out of hand, and you have so many branches in your managed code, and so many kind of updates here, updates there. People kind of start doing things maybe that are inconsistent, and then the actual kind of usage of Git kind of is a self-defeating purpose, because you are spending so much time figuring out what is up to date, who did what, that maybe a different approach would be needed, or sometimes definitely a better management process within Git would be needed. So yeah, I guess yeah, but this is the way to go, right? Definitely, especially if you have a distributed system where there is multiple contributions, in an enterprise environment.
Well, and I'm also thinking, we didn't use it too much, but Git could be used for anything, I think,
Yeah,
right?
that
Like
doesn't have to. Yeah, it doesn't
yeah,
have
it
to be
doesn't
code.
have to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
code, and you know how code
Mhm,
gets really nasty, like you said,
mhm.
because there's a bunch of junk in there, right? Like, but I'm just saying, in terms of an initial architecture, rather than having to invent something.
Mhm.
Git already has a lot of it there. Now, the mood tracker and such would be, I'm sure you can extend Git, right? I mean, it's not that hard, is it?
Well, it kind of depends what you want, right? I mean, ultimately, the computation you wanna do outside of it, and Git is just gonna be your repository, right?
Well, right, but it's a repository for the the for this, right? So somehow we would have to start somewhere with a plan. Like, the plan is in Jira and the code is in Git. Here's our problem, right? Like, here's the roadmap with all the tasks and all the blah 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 in this one tool, and then you go and build it in another tool.
So there might be other tools that are going to be more beneficial. Let's say a vector data store. So whenever you have a task that requires a very effective search, so you will have like multiple dynamic models described, let's say in text, for example, right? Then you
Mhm.
probably want to vectorize them, and you want to retrieve whatever is needed through a wonderful powerful search mechanism, which is right now supported by vector stores that host embeddings, not just vectors, but special type of vectors that are called embeddings, which are pre-processed by another generative kind of technology. So Git would be a repository of things that you not necessarily need to look for. That would be the repository of something that is kind of easy to find if you are looking for something that is most recent or something that is up to date. But if you have a set that you need to choose from, then I would say vector stores are best.
Okay, hold that thought. I'll be right back. I got to run to the bathroom. Okay, sorry about that. So let's rewind. Oh, are you back? Did you go to the bathroom too?
Hey, yeah.
Oh, here. Let me turn this off. So I did add some stuff here. You know, we can go in and comment later. I just want to go back to how do I get rid? Oh, hold on. Stop sharing. Okay, there we go. Okay, cool. So idea number one is that qualitative data can be captured in an activity.
Yeah,
Okay.
in an unstructured format that later can be converted into embedding that is searchable in among a very large data set.
And so we could call this almost a star rating, right? We could say it has some dimension and said, hey, how you're working, I just want to touch base, how you feeling or whatever. So if this was in my world right now, it'd be like kind of like my watch does this, like, how are you feeling right now? You know, and it's doing this thing, you know, and which is fine, but it isn't focused in context, right? The context is your life. Too big of a context for me, right? I don't know. I mean, right now I'm like, hey, I have this thing and I'm trying to figure it out, and you know, whatever. I'm screwing around in some way. Um, so context, and to me, a context could be provided by, I guess, this watchful AI, meaning, hey, you played, you know, a game for 20 minutes, then you had some lunch, and then you sat down and you started building something. And you see what I mean? Like it might be able to add some flavor if if it can understand it. Like, hey, it's just time of day. I mean, I put that in here. Like, hey, you like to work early in the morning, could be something contextually relevant. You like to do this, or you like to do that, or you work in some manner that you're not aware of, but I can give that as a context to your work. You know, hey, you have some characteristics that can be described in words. And as you do work, those things can get embedded into some sort of database. So right now, I mean, I'm working on my computer. What we're really bad with you and my and everybody's computer is we don't keep much context to anything that we create on our computer, right? It's just, hey, here's all my PowerPoint files. Well, that doesn't have any context, right? And we don't name things well. So, you know, this unstructured world gets messy quick. I'm sure you're very well aware of it, right? Like people have no idea of taxonomies. They don't know how to do anything. So, but we've got this new crazy tool, like you said, like it's really good at that stuff. It's really good at all the qualitative things we're bad at. Does that make too much hyperbole? Right?
No, very good. Yeah, I agree.
Right. And it's free. You know, it's the best part, right? Like you don't have to go in and do much to get it to do a fairly decent job. I mean, I'm still pretty confident because like 4.0, it's pretty good, right? Like it's definitely better than it was. And
Oh yeah.
Fortunately, human activity never gets easier. We just get more complicated, right? And we can butt our heads against 80%, which is all we should ever try to do, right? Like don't try to be fucking Einstein, right? Like just do a halfway decent job and you're ahead of things. But that human effort in computers, like it doubles its ability like every year. Unlike the real world, right? That's why, you know, I'm so bemused by robots, right? Because it's like doing human things is really difficult, you know. Whereas doing this other thing, we've invented a way to abstract it. So yeah, it doubles. You know, it's been doubling since you and I've been kids, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have any endpoint, but people are not, you know, I'm saying we should be able to be at 50%. I mean, you know, having been in many work situations, you can be at 20% or even worse, negative amounts if you're a CEO in terms of productivity. You know, so right, like the range is huge, but it's never 100%, right? It's never doubling. It's almost always like it's not great. But that's where
Mhm.
it's perfect, right? We've got this weird little thing here qualitatively that can help us. And then we've got this weird inability in ourselves to motivate ourselves and to work together better and to, you know, have more fun or something. So, but at least philosophically, I'm all over the map. Let's go back to I don't know why I needed to explain this to you. You know what I mean,
And
but you went back to
fun.
vectors. Sorry, we were just talking about vectors, and I think
And no, no, but coming back to fun, I mean, fun might be actually the operative word, for most people, um, because if we can kind of gamify the work,
sure.
that is, I mean, name another system that besides games that people would kind of volunteer kind of spending time, like in South Korea, people apparently are passing out or getting heart attacks, through exhaustion resulting from playing StarCraft or whatever, right? So name another system that can have that effect on people. So if you could make it fun, gamify it so that it's a little bit, of those aspects of gaming, then maybe that's a kind of objective worth looking into, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and just in terms of the pitch, because we both know that stories, right? Just telling a story about a potential is a motivator for action and budget and other stuff, right? Someone
Mm,
somewhere, probably not Vince, is deciding how much money he can spend on whatever crazy idea he has, right? And
mm,
we're saying, hey, you in this executive position are really flipping a coin, probably, unless you are very good at understanding how to trust people. This is the problem, right? Like it's all very I certainly work with people that I absolutely they trust because they've demonstrated it over and over again that they manage to get really hard stuff done, right? But
mm,
that's also the problem with burnout, which is you don't want somebody to just have
mm,
that much responsibility because that sooner or later things change, and also many hands make light work, right? So we're trying to figure out like how do we get all those light hands, which I consider to be juniors. They have to have something to
mm,
do. They're definitely going to learn while doing it. And then they have to keep that learning and apply it again and again as you get better at it. And so that you
mm,
show proficiency after a while, right? And I don't think there's anybody's particular job it is to recognize that other than bosses, and then we're really bad at that because honestly, it's like in class. I always spend time with poor performers. You know what I mean? That's all
mm,
I ever do. And and usually they're not poor because they don't have ability. They're just poor because the situation isn't right, or whatever. They have to work during the day and they prefer to work all night or whatever, right? Who
mm,
knows? It's up if it was up to them, which I did experience in Scrum, where people who are pretty good at things literally don't have to work hard at all to get a ton of stuff done. What became the problem was the strategist, right? The prioritization part was bad. We kept
mm,
getting stuff that wasn't really worth doing. But hey, again, we're all here to learn, right? Like it is, it's just that, as it is, it's very hierarchical and it's always been hierarchical because apparently that's how you run an army. But actually, it should be cyclical because if you don't have mutual
mm,
beneficial behaviors, you're always going to need some sort of like strong arm, like
mm,
forcing people into, like you just said, no one has to force somebody. Like my son is going to sit there and play Tetris to get the highest score in North America because somehow that's a thing you can do or whatever, like it's this
mm,
thing that people will do because we love positive reinforcement. Just like I wouldn't do any of this if GPT didn't say that's a great idea, you know,
mm,
which it always seems to say, right? So I'm like, yeah, if you said, oh, this is pretty meh, and someone's already thought of this, which I just found out, geez, this thing I thought was so clever, actually, they thought of in the 1800s. But it's good. It's all good. I was very happy that the 1800s people, remember I was talking
Mm,
about the periodic table being circular. Well, that was the first periodic table, was this sort of spiral thing. So I was like,
mm.
oh, okay, good. I was like, all right, that's pretty neat.
All right, cool.
Anyways, sidebar. Okay, so building it. I'm still trying to be lazy here, and that's why I thought of Git. But I don't want it to be Git in the sense of a code repository, more like Git Git has some of the mechanics around getting work done. And I don't know that anyone's really applied Git to all work, because I certainly could consider any cloud-based stuff to be Git based, right? Isn't it almost kind of all based on Git? Like, because you've got differences and you've got potential rollbacks and you have all that crap in there somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's mechanisms that are useful, but to me, it is a repository that tracks changes, right? So that's kind of where the advantage is, right? It is
And
not necessary.
identities, because
Yeah,
people
yeah,
do things,
exactly,
right?
exactly. Yeah. So,
And
but
you can
it is.
collaborate on a file, can't you? And Git, like two people could work on something, sort of.
Yeah, yeah, and then you have to kind of make so that's where the tree begins to spread, right? And then Git becomes a little bit harder to manage, because you might contribute a change, so you will check it in with Git, and then I will contribute the change, and then so we have two changes, right? And maybe we want to reconcile them, or maybe not. So if that kind of like management task is not crystal clear and performed well, then you are beginning to kind of see the situation gets out of hand, because you might have 20 people who also contributed something, and then who is supposed to manage that, right? So to me, Git is has its requirements, in terms of management.
Well, how about this? Well, maybe one of the first proof of concepts would be this context creation. And this might
Yeah.
be where you could really help, because you're working on something right now that does have a context that is lost once you commit, right? Pretty much. Like,
Mm-hmm.
who cares about the code, as you're saying, although that is what everyone cares about. But the code is somewhat explanatory. You said n-2, and I said n-8 or whatever. You know what? So we've got some tactical differences in an approach toward a problem, and we can reconcile that or whatever. But the context that each of us came to could be like, well, I just looked it up on an LLM, whatever, right? And you were took longer, but you were reading a book about it, and then you decided that this approach architecturally was better. Let's just
Yeah.
pretend, right? There was some deeper thought involved. How could we start to imagine verbalizing the context of a contribution?
Well, I think that I think the way I see things happening is that, yes, you looked up an information within an LLM and you got an answer, and I opened a book, but that book is probably already within the LLM's
I
training data
understand. I
set.
just meant it in terms of more about thoughtfulness, let's say, or
Yeah,
investment. Your
yeah.
investment may be identical. Mine might be better. I could be the funny go move, or whatever that the person would never do. But it's still like, it doesn't matter. But the verbalization of this, I think, is somehow key to me, because it's tricky. Like, um, I, I guess what
So
am I
so
trying to
so
get at is, like,
so
on a
let me.
granular level, if you had a bunch of emotions, right?
Yeah.
Like 3 stars, 5 stars, 2 stars, which you could start to keep throughout the day, right? You could
Mhm.
sort of just have some sort of log, like, how are you feeling? This is the stuck thing, like wherever those statuses were, right? Like, yeah, whatever. And then you had some sort of verbal explanation. Then that would come into something
Mhm.
interesting, I guess, is my point, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah. So maybe let me kind of use an example of like in the programming world. I'm no longer interested in storing my code. I'm more interested in storing the directives that I use to generate the code through an LLM, because if that directive is good, then I have a very high level of confidence that the code that's going to come out from an LLM is going to be correct and exactly what I want. Right. And then I handle the modularity the same way. I handle the modularity through my context or the story that I write that the LLM reads and creates the modularity that I want. Right. So I think we can transition the same thing into the world that you are describing, where we will build the story that is going to describe the tasks or whatever the kind of aspects that you are outlining. Right, and the implementation of it doesn't have to be stored. The implementation of it can be real time generated through those directives or through those stories that we're going to write. So I would store those in Git or whatever, right, and then kind of have the system expand into whatever. If you need to generate code, be my guest. If you need to generate an image, be my guest. Next year, we're going to start talking about, hey, let's generate a video of an avatar that is going to be participating in a meeting, right? So we have to aim very high with this, with the assumptions that the technology is catching up maybe even faster than our ideas are kind of evolving.
Well, this is the fun thing. It's always going to double, but I think what we're going to hit is our 80 to 50%, right? Humans are not going to change. That's our problem, right? We did this with .com, right? It's like, hey, we're all going to buy everything online. Let's throw everything we've got at it, and then nobody did. For 10 years, until, there was a sort of a tipping point, right? For whatever reason that all the other things kind of went out of business. And now we're in this, obviously Amazon's a fun example because all they really did was solve logistics, which was a super hard problem to solve. And I'm sure they're continuing to solve it, right? Like it isn't a constantly solved problem, but because their goal wasn't having a bunch of good stuff to sell. It was actually how to get the things to you better. That's an interesting problem, and more of a human problem, because then they were actually exploiting our own laziness, right? Which is great. And now I'm trying to say, it's like, what if, our jobs could be 50% of our efforts, but we got much more out of it, right? We want to amplify it because you're right. We've got the tools, but we don't have the processes.
Yeah.
And, exactly. And is this the process? I don't know. I'm just trying to think of how do you get all this kind of ephemeral data out of any kind of work? Because if you looked at it, I'm hoping most of it is goofing around or being lost or not being informed. You know what I mean? Like that's got to be a fair amount of work.
Yeah. Not reading the instructions, right? Like
sure.
And then by the way, who's supposed to write those instructions? How do you know that the instructions are going to be written? I had a story that I often tell, when I was working in robotics, that the instructions that came with the robots are flat out wrong. Maybe you could see that they are translations from Japanese or Chinese or whatever, and they are kind of, and often they're going to be wrong, because you are supposed to press button X, but but in reality, absolutely not, right? You're supposed to press another button to get the robot started, and if you press button X, you're kind of like erasing the memory of the robot, that kind of thing. So like terrible mistakes, right? So who's supposed to write the instructions is a big question, and who's supposed to read? I mean, we already know that they're not going to be read, for the most part, right? So this is kind of all, but but I think where we can start is kind of maybe we can grab something, right, and then maybe apply it to something that we do. Like for example, let's say if I'm writing, if I'm developing a system, maybe I'm not feeling too good, that day, so my writing is going to be deficient. That's where the co-pilots and the AI can kick in to kind of help me out more. But maybe on my good day, I'm gonna just kind of take over a lot more. So these kind of things, I think we can kind of identify like small slices of the problem and kind of maybe see where this goes.
Well, so yes, and as I said, my own scatteredness makes it difficult because I just know that I'm more erratic. But let's say, for example, if you had a story and a problem you're working on, which you know, from somewhere, you know, Vince, hey, go save us some money. Okay, whatever. Okay, so that's the name of the story, right? And you have to provide a ton of context to that, which you may or may not write down, but you know, sooner or later it has to be something communicatable because you obviously have to have those check-ins every day, week, or month, or maybe never, you know, whatever, right? Like, you know, this is the curiosity, right? Is there we're still trying to get to something called prioritization, right? Because our natural tendency would be like with me is I can go down a rabbit hole and then end up nowhere and it's not useful, which is fine. You know, hey, maybe I learned something, right? I just cooked this beef stroganoff last night, didn't eat it, totally sucked, made a mistake, but that's fine, right? I mean, this is the thing is you can do a lot of things and still not succeed, but doesn't mean they're not worthwhile. So this is also trying to reinforce that in our work is that fruitlessness, just because we have these amazing tools doesn't mean we're making more good stuff, right? That's the point, is our goals still have to be worthwhile. Even though our tools are fantastic, you know, it still can make crap.
Yeah.
And that's where we have to develop skills around, well, what's worthwhile, what's working, what's going to be beneficial. And that's where, again, there's sort of a meta goal, but I'm still back here trying to figure this out. I can send this to you or whatever. It's just trying to get the data structures to make some sense because ultimately everything's built on this.
Yeah, and I have a hunch.
Oh, I'm not showing it to you, but here
I have a hunch. I have a hunch that those data structures are going to be less and less important, because at the end of the day, an unstructured or meta level data about the data structure that you're trying to create is going to be more important than the actual table. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing. But yeah, I mean, definitely, you know, to begin with, you know, the data structure, is something that, you know, let's look at.
Well, yeah, and because just it's going to have some dimensions that are much more well, reliable, like time. I mean, whatever. Time is going to pass, right? And time is money or whatever. I mean, those are some things that I don't want to lose in just being all qualitative because we still are trying to somehow bridge the gap, right? Hey, if you said it's going to take 2 weeks and you come in and you say it's going to cost $5,000, guess what? You only get $5,000 or we have a problem. And this is the thing is there is still like the idea that most of this is going to run off some sort of promise or a contract or whatever, right? That's how business, I think, thinks it works. What we're trying to say is that the great, depending on which side you're on, you're either going to get a poorer job if something comes up, right? Things will change. That's the whole point. And how do you manage that change can be both qualitative and quantitative, because you said it was going to take you 2 weeks and cost $5,000, whereas you then found out that you have done it in a day and you get the $5,000 and the great, right? I'm still going to wait 2 weeks and then I'm going to deliver it until they find out, oh no, we changed our mind and we don't really need this anymore. You see what I mean? It's how to deal with that learning. You know, it's learning, honestly, is I guess what we're trying to game right now. You know, like everybody is learning. If they're not, well, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like there's more than learning. I think there's some other things that we are also trying to do, like kind of
Motivation.
like,
Yeah,
yeah, oh
motivation
yeah,
is a big one.
maybe that's better, yeah.
Because if
Or,
you're a junior, like you're confident, you know that you could tackle a problem as I would. And I would say I could absolutely fail at making this dinner and not call myself a bad cook. That's my thing, right? Like I'm not going to get that discouraged. I've cooked plenty
mm,
of good stuff. Just because I messed up one thing is not a big deal. But when you're younger or you're less experienced,
mhm.
it's really devastating, because
Yeah.
you're in this new place with this new people and everybody's talking big talk, and it's like, hey, we're going to change the world or whatever people do in business. I don't know what,
Mm.
hey, we're going to help all these students. Remember all that crap? These poor kids need help.
Yeah, yeah, and they should come to the office hours, which they absolutely dread.
Exactly. Well, that's what we were trying to say is that all of the behaviors of successful people are not the behaviors that we need to identify. It's the ones where you need help. And that's why, maybe there's getting a lot of humanistic comments on some, I'm very socialist in my writing. So I'm like, hey, AI is for this and it's here to help, it's helping to amplify us. It isn't going to replace us, I guess, is the thing that people respond to. And it should be,
Mm.
right? It because people still have to be people. We get to be the people who are blamed at least, right? When things go wrong. Whereas, Sam Altman doesn't, I don't think they get blamed too much. Maybe Grok gets blamed, but even it apparently bitches about Musk too, if you ask it. So who knows?
Um, yeah. Well, yeah, maybe.
And maybe. All right, I sent the thing. I don't know if the actual data structure is important, but it seems like because of the tools, we can start to build something. Will you give it some thought about the data set, right? Like what could it glean from you if you were
Mm,
thinking more in a meta level? You probably aren't right now, but how would you report your progress? You know?
mm,
Would it have to be verbal or people, hey, how's that going? Is it all very under the thing? Think of if you quantified it somehow. Could you do that for me?
mm.
Because I think you've got a
Yeah,
better opportunity.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
if you can't generate any insights and you're thinking about it, that's good to
Mm,
know right now, right? That's the thing of like, hey, if I made it pretty and made it easy and made it have a little, reward system for you, you see what I mean? Like those are all extras. But if there isn't any insight underneath it, there we go. And if you ever had to collaborate with somebody, you might
mm,
have to also say, hey, if it's possible,
mm,
if we're communicating verbally, if you're sitting next to me, it's great. Hey, oh, you know, stuck or whatever people say, right?
mm,
Um, or they say want to go to lunch or whatever people are often doing, right? But if you had that a little more casually through this disintermediated system, would it help? Because I think people still are 100% more motivated by social structures than they're ever going to be by LLMs, right? Like you don't have to become friends with an LLM. It'll just like you automatically, but people and peers are different, and especially leadership, right? Like you want them to like you.
yeah. With a caveat, I mean, you know what I think. Since the beginning of gaming, right? People fell in love, with a matrix of 64 by 64 pixels called Mario, right? So I think those social structures will be very easy to generate with the AI being multimodal and displaying a picture of somebody that you would like to look at, or somebody who is inspiring confidence. So maybe some sort of a you know Greek, philosopher being your boss, or somebody like,
Yeah.
maybe, Michael Jordan being your coach, something like that. It's going to be really easy to simulate. My feeling is, so, and when the robotics comes online, with with generative AI kind of controlling the movement, then oh my God, that's going to be even stronger feeling, in terms of the synthetic feeling, or well, however we want to call it. So yeah, so I think that yeah, I mean we definitely can kind of start somewhere, and insights, reports, kind of would be kind of a good thing. So yeah, I made my notes. So yeah, I will look into
All right.
this.
Well, and believe me, I'm gonna screw around as well. But let's take it from there. And my hope is that you can generate something that will help me structurally, because my goals are much less structured than yours. But still,
Yeah.
I could be like, I do have 20 some odd writing projects, but I just don't. I just make 20 more a day, rather than do that.
Yeah.
But either way, the newest episode should come out. I published it, and my sister was actually watched the whole thing, which was amazing. I was like, wow.
Oh, I know.
I don't know, but we still have
So
plenty of viewers and plenty
So
of
we have one
commenters.
verified viewer and plenty of other unverified viewers.
Let's just look. I don't know. I published it, but it's puzzling to me because I was like, but that's good. She is certainly not our target audience, but let's just look at stats really quick. All right, YouTube Studio stats, whatever it's called. YouTube, come on. All right, well, we got 12. I haven't published it yet. Oh no, this is a different one. Hold on. We've got something. Maybe we have 117 subscribers. Weird.
All right.
33, and I haven't published it yet. So who knows? So maybe my sister is telling. Oh, we got 1 like. That was fun. That was pretty good, right?
Good.
But well, anyway, but we'll continue. I'll probably keep this still maybe under wraps. I don't know. It's sort of a weird idea, but I would like to see, like, again, I'm just starting to go into architect mode, but somehow figure out how to play with it. And you'll be the test subject. All right?
Very good. Very good. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for going long on this one. Apologize. You need to go get lunch. But we'll talk next week. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, you too.
Anytime. Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.